And we're going live in no, three, no, three, two, one. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Cheatcast. I'm your host, Marcus Julian Carbo, here on day two of our 3-week tour of meeting the fabulous instructors of Tai Chi for Veterans. Today, we've got a special little rendition for you. I've got two incredible men that will be joining me today. These two, well, today is your chance to meet not one, not two, but three, in fact, veterans. First, of course, there's me. You're meeting me. But beyond that, we have two very awesome vets. One from Uncle Sam's Misguided Children, the United States Marine Corps, and one from the Air Force. We'll just leave it there. And I'm here with my cup o chi. It's tea, but it's cup o chi. You get it. I guess I can't really talk until we get the guest, right? Because I can't drink until I get the guest because I've carried this whole thing by myself. All right, that's fine. So I'm going to let you in a little secret of what was going on with me this morning. I am, in case all of you are wondering, and I know that the term millennial is in fact associated with the young, the youth, but in fact, the census generation of millennial starts in 1981. That means that in 2021, the millennials begin to turn 40, right? And I happen to be one of those incoming vintage millennials, as it were, knocking on the door of 40. And I had this morning, actually, I was inspired a couple of days ago by a song that a friend of mine had composed and sent me a sample of. And it was, and he's very young. He's a younger guy. He's a Zoomer, as we like to call him, Generation Z. And young guy, early 20s, and he's a great musician. Jordy, a little shout out to you, my friend. He sends me a sample, and the sample it's very modern. The music is very modern. The set pieces and all that very much contemporary. However, the way he intermixed it with the lyrics and the vocals and the sounds made it sound very much like music from the 90s, right? And so suddenly I had this song in my head, right? And then Sunday night, I had a hangout with my writers group, which is in fact the group by which I know this friend. And we had this sort of walk down memory lane. We're asking different questions about people's firsts, the first time you ever like drank alcohol or something of that nature. And I was able to walk down memory lane with that. And so mixed with all this inspiration and nostalgia, I woke up this morning thinking I need to listen to the music of my youth. So this would be no different than the baby boomers listening to Marvin Gaye, Barry White, Hendrix, Pink Floyd, this kind of thing. And normally, when I do listen to music, a lot of my playlists are, in fact, 90s like grunge rock or metal or yeah. If you want to know what your Tai Chi guy does in his spare time or what he listens to, I've got an Edgar Allan Poe nod right here. So things can get dark and spooky with the chi on this side. Beside that point, I caught myself listening to, oh my God, all the jams, all of the jams. Boy, did I listen to them. 112, Genuine, Tyrese, you name it. The slow jams were on this morning, and I couldn't help but just let the beat take me. I almost died about 3 times in the shower, dancing around, slipping on soap. It's a good thing that I have the Tai Chi. Oh my God. I was rocking out, absolutely rocking out. And part of this was inspired by a piece that I started writing because of this, because I was listening to the slow jams And there really isn't any music like that anymore, right? When you look at sort of the eras of music, there's the classical range, but even those are sort of breaking up into Mozartian, Beethoven, you know, and then more modern stuff. But then you get sort of you get kind of this commercial. Uh, Everything sounds very much the same for a while through. I mean, the 20s were cool. I mean, not that I lived there, not that really any of us who are listening to this right now were alive 100 years ago. And if you are, good on you, life. You have won. You have won. If you were alive in the 20s, you have absolutely won. Um, when you hear the music, the big band, the jazz, the swing music of the 20s and 30s, that's really cool. It's a lot of fun, and there's something to that. But it's all still very instrumental. We get into the 40s and 50s, and you start to get vocals more as the technology improved and as what makes a celebrity kind of gets defined in the American zeitgeist. And during this time, we see the rise of a lot of those greats, the Frank Sinatras and the Elvis Presleys. And then we get to the 60s. And the 60s is a funky time, right? Because you're coming out of the age of conformity, at least that's what historians call it, in the 50s. And then you go into the 60s, which is a very tumultuous time, right? You have the baby boomers fighting against what they saw as injustice and the status quo, kind of what we see today. Everything comes full circle, right? The Tai Chi Bu, everything just keeps rolling. So you get to the 60s though, and right around when Woodstock is about to happen, and Vietnam's ramping up, and that's all of a sudden the golden age of music. This is when you get the most amazing, absolutely amazing musicians, contemporary musicians of the 20th century, right? Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, the Beatles flipped their whole thing. They let Paul and John do their thing, and we get the best of the Beatles at that point. We get Janis Joplin. We've got the Doors. Like Jim Morrison he is on the ball at that point. Bill Weathers is out at that time. The Temptations are at all-time high. Marvin Gaye, Barry White, all that is going on in that time period. It's right there between about 68 and 73 to 75, around that era. Again, I'm not alive, but I love this music, so I listen to it a lot. I think it's fantastic music. Now, let's be honest here. Disco kind of killed everything. So the end of the 70s, I like the Bee Gees as much as anybody, but the oomph of music sort of dropped, the acid rock just sort of went towards hair bands and all that kind of thing. The Motown sound, that soul sound that we got, turned into funk. And we didn't have a lot of draw. There was some international flair and draw that we were getting as the islands became more alive and as we started to import a lot of Latin music. But the 80s came around, and what was mainstream was very commercial. It was very much like the landscape that we have now. Lots of one-hit wonders. The music is very dated now. You can tell an 80s song when an 80s song comes up. You wouldn't necessarily be able to, except for like the greats. Like if we're talking about like Michael Jackson, or we're talking, Madonna. But a lot of the bands, a lot of the music in the heart of the 80s very much sounded like 80s music, right? There wasn't something to really draw it apart. And then the 80s go through this weird period of change. And when they do that, you get, the Bon Jovis who start pushing rock away from the hairband thing and toward the what the 90s, what Nirvana would end up being, when even rap was changing, and we would ultimately end up with Biggie and Tupac and all those guys. And when you think back to the 90s, like bands that actually did hit their heights in the 2000s in this century, like Green Day, they were a popular band in the 90s, but they weren't A-listers in the 90s. You know, your A-listers were, you know, Nirvana and the Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails. These were your big bands. And in the 90s, we were very spoiled. We got this sort of silver age of music where no matter what genre you listened to, no matter what type of style or what you were into, there was something out there for you. And pop music was just a genre. It was just another genre. It was where your Christina Aguilera's and your Britney Spears went. Um, and that was it. Like that was it. And I also remember in that time thinking like I was always sort of the youngest in the room, you know. I mean, in the 90s I'm growing up. You know, I'm hitting my teen years. I'm going through adolescence. So for me, you know, in that time period, I was always the young guy. I never kind of felt old. And it dawned on me the other day that these time periods that I think of when we're talking Nirvana, when we're talking like when Sam and I were talking about the WWF's Attitude Era and the Monday Night Wars or Batman the Animated Series, or all these staples of my childhood, they happened a long time ago now. Like they really did happen a long time ago. 25 years. I remember my daughter, what was it, 2 birthdays ago, she had a Nightmare Before Christmas because she's a huge fan of Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. That's probably one of my top 10 favorite movies, so it's not shocking. I think it's her like favorite. And she was telling me that, we throw this themed party for her 13th birthday, and what it dawned on me was that it was the 25th year anniversary of The Nightmare Before Christmas, and I remember it coming out in theaters, and I was like, "Wow, I am so old." And it was that moment where I started thinking, like, well, how do? Because I remember being a kid back in the '90s and looking at adults, and they all looked very old, and I was wondering, and because I don't feel old like you guys, I don't feel old, but I know I've put a good amount of time in on the planet. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've done a lot of things. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. So, what does that ultimately mean? How do they view me? How do they see me? I don't know. I don't know. But as Adam starts to plug in here, we're going to find out what he finds to be nostalgic from his childhood. That's right. We're going all Freudian on Adam today. Good morning, Adam. How are you, brother?
Hey, doing pretty good. How are you, Marcus?
I am good. How's the weather down there in Asheville, North Carolina?
It's
Oh,
a rainy day down here.
rainy. Oh, I'll
Yeah.
send some sun your way. We've got some gorgeous weather up here in Philly, which is cool. So how's your day started already?
Yeah, pretty good. Just a nice, easy morning so far. Yeah, nothing too big. So
Oh,
yeah, when getting my business set up, so I was working on that a little bit, and I got a webinar coming up. So I'm doing it on. It's actually called Five Tai Chi Secrets to Heal Your Back Pain. So it's a way to use the Tai Chi principles to actually integrate it with Western science. Because I'm also a physical therapist, so I kind of like
okay.
to combine the two, so that it's kind of the best of Eastern and Western healing.
I love that approach. I love that approach. I think some people go off in one direction or another, way too extreme. So tell us a bit about that. What does Western science and Eastern philosophy make together?
Well, it's really a great combination. I think they work really great together. By themselves, they also have their disadvantages. So Western and conventional medicine is great for acute or emergency cases. It's great for keeping people alive. It's great for really severe or we call it sinister things like cancer. Fractures. We break a bone, stuff like that. It's really great for that, but it kind of falls short when it comes to prevention and looking at the whole body, because sometimes it's great. Sometimes you can take medications and do certain interventions, and it does the trick. But honestly, for most people, if there's also this other component that we're missing out, and that's where Eastern philosophy comes in, such as Tai Chi and all types of other types of Eastern philosophies and traditions, because they focus on the whole body and prevention. And that's really the key, I think, is, there's a saying, they say, like, don't wait till you're dying of thirst to start digging your well, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the idea with Eastern medicine and practices is, we look at the whole body, we look at how can we prevent things from happening by first getting the body and mind into balance. And so
Oh,
I
that.
think if we can do both, then we're have a pretty good healthcare system instead of just a disease care system.
Ooh, that's very Marianne Williamson of you there, brother. Very much so. Philly's favorite son, Benjamin Franklin, always said the an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Right. So, are you looking in that framework, sort of? If you maintain the body, if you maintain your vehicle, if you change the oil, kick the tires, replace the parts as needed, then you won't have the big breakdown on the side of the road. Is that what we're saying here?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you can do that, then a lot of times you don't need some of the more invasive interventions that that we find ourselves in. Some, like I said, sometimes we need that, but if we can prevent it or at least create balance in the mind and body, then maybe we still might need an intervention. Sometimes we just are dealt pretty bad cards, but maybe it won't be as severe or it won't be as invasive. We can kind of get back and get to a higher level than we would have otherwise.
So when do you? Because you've got Western background, Western academics, but then you've studied a ton in Eastern philosophies and Eastern treatments. How? When is that line? Where's that line in the sand where someone should be practicing, say, Tai Chi, or meditation, or fasting, or something to that degree, or they should be going to the doctor to get treatment for something acute? Where do you see that line existing?
I mean, it's really an individual basis. I mean, for me, I'm trained as a physical therapist. That's probably most of my training was there. And so from that perspective, if you have musculoskeletal pain, then a lot of times, there's only I think it's like 1% or even less of when you have pain that's actually something bad, like sinister bad. And so most of the time, you can just relieve that with exercise, and you could use Tai Chi, you could use physical therapy movements, and so I always say, like, talk to a PT first to see if you even need to go to see. Because I'll say, for me, like, if there's someone that just had maybe an acute bout of back pain or something and they never had it before, and a lot of times it's going to clear up on its own. But if you don't do anything, then it's likely to come back. And so that's where it's probably good to talk to someone, a healthcare professional. Um, but, like I said, with physical therapy, that's our bread and butter is musculoskeletal pain. If it's, back pain, neck pain, any type of joint or muscle, stuff like that. Um, but honestly, like, if you start to move, if say you're sedentary and you start to have pain, and if you start to just move, a lot of times that can help to clear it up. And if you're doing gentle movements like Tai Chi, then that's even better, because a lot of times we think we have to go running, like, miles and miles, and we have to run to get in shape, when actually we have to get the body and mind set right before we can, do some of those more, common things that we think are like what to do. So if we're doing Tai Chi, and we're doing even yoga and all these other, Eastern practices, then, a lot of times we can just try that. And then if it feels like it's not getting better, or if you feel like you're just not sure, then it's always good to talk to someone too. So it's very individual. But I always say, like, right now, with physical therapy, we're trying to promote people to talk to a PT rather than going to necessarily their physician first. Because a lot of times you'll go to the physician and then they'll, maybe order expensive tests, get x-rays and MRIs, and then you're like, you're seeing everything. And you're like, oh, there's this wrong and that wrong. It creates fear. And then a lot of times they'll, not all physicians, but then some will prescribe medications. And then, luckily now there's the whole opioid epidemic awareness, and so they're doing that less, but it's easy to get hooked on those. And then you just go down a rabbit hole of invasive, injections, surgery, and a lot of times you just need to move better. You need to move more, but move better as well. And Tai Chi is great for that because it teaches you posture, it teaches you how to soften and release tension. And so a lot of times you can just try that. And so, but if you do feel, if there's some red flags that you definitely want to see, a physician for, and that's if you have numbness, loss of function, especially if it's getting worse and worse. It's degrading or progressing worse. Um, or if you're like you're losing weight all of a sudden and having getting woken up at night from the pain, stuff like that, you might want to just call someone just to make sure. But if it's pain, if it's like your aches and pains or something like that, then yeah, Tai Chi and PT, especially together, I think is a great recipe for success.
Wow, that's awesome. So combining the two. So what you mentioned something earlier as far as basically the mental component of this whole thing. How how do you suggest that someone, let's say I'm sitting on my couch, I'm probably 40 or 50 pounds overweight, I haven't done a push-up since the Bush administration, like I just have no motivation to get up and do anything. And what spark does a person need to find that impetus to go out there and seize the world, or at least get back in shape?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, once again, it's really individual. I started mine was basically my dad because my dad died when he was 59
Oh my
from
God.
heart disease and diabetes. And so for me, that was my kind of spark to like, hey, I want to make it past 59, And so I got really into health and wellness. And then I actually got into strength and conditioning first, to where I started to do some personal training and working there. And then I wanted to get more flexible. So I started to do yoga.
Mhm.
And then actually I wanted to quit drinking. And so in order to quit drinking, I needed to replace it with something. And I just happened to be reading a book about meditation at the time. And then that's when I started meditating. And then from there, I was just I was like, whoa, this is amazing, And, it doesn't like, it's not like that for everyone, but for me, I had like this euphoric feeling when I'd meditate, kind of like, the feel good feelings sometimes you get when drinking. So for me, it was like a great replacement. And so then the meditation, I wanted to learn more and more. And so I started to study about chi and what that was. I'm like, what is this energy? What is this like? What's this more experience rather than, because I was in my head so much learning all the science of physical therapy and exercise science, but I was like, there's something more than that. And so I started to study about the energy from the Eastern traditions. And for me, then it just led into being a yoga instructor and then now a Tai Chi instructor. But really, when it comes, so I can only, it's hard for me to talk for other people. So I'm trying to talk from my own experience. But in general, you really just got to try different things. If you really want to make changes in your life, then don't be afraid to fail. Try something. If it doesn't work, I like to say, if it don't apply, let it fly.
I like it. Don't be afraid to fail. That I feel is something that a lot of people don't hear in their lives. What does that mean to you? Don't be afraid to fail.
Well, I mean, the thing is we don't we don't come with a handbook necessarily. I know there's different textbooks out there that might help, but in general, not a personal one for us specific person because everyone's different. So what
Sure.
might work for you might not work for me. So you just got to keep trying things. But I think we're just wired to not want. We hate rejection. So we're and basically it's just really easy to not find the right thing right away. And so you got to keep trying things. And what you'll find is every experience is you can turn it into a learning experience. I mean, it can be either an obstacle or it can be a path to progression. And so if you can actually just try things out, then you'll probably not find the right thing right away. But if you keep going, then you'll finally find what clicks, and maybe even a combination of things. So you might be like, oh, that didn't work. But like what I did, now I'm like, oh, well, I haven't been focusing on like some of the mindfulness for a while. But now that I'm doing the Tai Chi, I'm bringing the mindfulness back in, and now it does work for me. So what might not work for you now might even work later. But since you've had that experience, now you can kind of incorporate it, as you need to, as it makes sense.
So that's really cool. Let me ask you this question: how long have you been doing Tai Chi? And when did Tai Chi actually start to feel like the internal practice? Because now what you've been talking about is this holistic lifestyle, the meditation, the maintenance of the body, even I think you mentioned diet a couple of times in there. When did this become a lifestyle and an internal driver in your life?
Yeah, well, like I said, it sparked when I was so I was actually in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and I did 2 tours in Iraq. And when I got out, well, actually, before I even got out, I was actually talking to my dad. He's like, "Yeah, you got to do something that once you get out, you want to find something that you like to do." And I was really into lifting weights at the time, and so I started to really dive into that. I started to go into like the science of lifting weights and all that.
Mhm.
But then once I got out, I started to get into exercise science, and I went to college. And then from that point, sorry, what was the question again? I got lost.
Oh, when did it become an internal art for you? When did you
Oh, an
like
internal art. Yes. So as I was learning, I think I kind of mentioned it before. It kind of developed naturally. It kind of just developed by my interest. Like I wanted to learn how to, I ultimately wanted to have a nice career so I could have a family and have time and time freedom and location freedom. So I think it's really important to figure out what you want. I mean, I think that's really the main thing is what is it really that's important to you, because that's what level you'll come from. Um, and then the rest are kind of just details that you have to work out. But for me, it was actually in Iraq. When I was in Iraq, actually, I was in Kuwait, waiting to go to Iraq, and
it?
I was sitting there in a tent, and I was just away from anyone I loved, or besides my fellow Marines, but family and friends, and I just felt kind of alone in a way, and so I actually started reading the Bible, and I was like, I felt this like internal like love, I guess the only way to describe it. And I just felt this internal, this like there's something else there. Um, and then after I got out, I kind of forgot about that. But then as I started to meditate, meditate, and I started to do yoga and then Tai Chi, then the same feeling kind of came back, but in a way that it kind of fit with it fit with me better. It was a better fit than what I was reading before in the Bible. It didn't quite like I felt it, but I didn't quite. It just didn't seem to fit with my lifestyle, and so. Um, and I had a lot of conditioning, and there's a lot of history that a lot of stuff that gets stuck in like dharma and all. I mean, dogma that gets kind of mixed in. Um, so, but yeah, I think it's just this. I think a lot of times we find that we look for these things when we are at our rock bottom, or we're at a really intense experience, or we have a trauma. I think we start to look for something, and we can either, well, actually, there's two ways we could go. We could kind of just go inside and just kind of constrict and hide in a way, and just kind of contract, you know, or we can say, or we can reach out, and we can reach out and expand. And it's kind of like the Tai Chi principle of contracting, expanding. And so I decided to expand. I decided, you know what? I don't know if I even consciously decided. I just kind of naturally just was reaching out. And so that's what I found. I found that Tai Chi and yoga and meditation were the spiritual practices that not only helped me, deal with trauma, deal with addiction, but also helped me to be a better person on a daily basis. And so that's really why I'm sticking with it now. And it's just about self-development as well as keeping my body healthy as well. So it's kind of a mind-body thing. And then, yeah, as you said, if you add in nutrition, if you add in, finding out which foods are right for you, and trying to, also siphon through the conditioning that we're kind of taught, because when it comes to nutrition, especially, it's just everyone has a different opinion. There's no great guideline, except for actually what I do for health coaching is an elimination diet. And to me, as of now, that's what I think is the best way to figure out what food is best for you, because it's really like you take out foods that are basically the most common allergens and irritants, and then you add them in, and then you do that for about a month, and then you start to add them in slowly, and you say, oh, how does this make me feel? And it creates this awareness too. And so, I mean, stuff like that, it's really about experimenting. It's about finding what's right for you and not just listening to someone else and just doing what they say because they're an authority.
Mm.
I mean, it's good to try those things, but then always ask yourself, is this actually like, what is your experience? What's my experience? And, because sometimes, it's a lot different than what you think.
Right. I mean, what you're talking about is a journey, is a long journey of trial and error and lots of patience, which kind of goes against the river of the now, right? In the 240 character world, in a world where everybody wants instant gratification, where you can just download your movies immediately, you don't have to wait for them to come out. How what is your vision for sort of imparting these Eastern lessons that you've learned, these grand life lessons? We don't even parse them Eastern Western. These sort of universal downloads that you've made. How do we get that out into the zeitgeist to make the culture, not make it, but to get the culture to see how it can adopt and grow from it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to teach in general, or to parent, or really just to lead, is to lead by example. And
Mm.
so just by doing what you would like to see the world to do, I think that's really the key. Because then, and then luckily we have social media now. So then sharing these practices, and just, trying to just offer, and just give it as an offering. Because when we try to force people to do things, or we try to convince, it just automatically causes people to say, it pulls up the defensive mechanisms. So yeah, I mean, at the least, I mean, it's not very little, but basically by leading by example is really the key. Because if everyone is doing that, if everyone is kind of well, especially the people that want to lead, then if you're living the life that you want to see, that's really the key. Because I mean, people can see through it too if you're not actually, if you're just preaching, but you're not actually practicing. And it's all about practice. So it starts with practicing. I would say a daily practice. And for me, it was meditation. That's like the core of my practice. Is every day. I haven't missed. I could only, maybe there's a handful of days I've missed in the past 12, 13 years.
Really?
It's about when I started meditating and doing yoga and qigong, and then a few years after that, I started to get more into Tai Chi. But I wanted to learn qigong first, and because I felt like it was kind of the basis of really all martial arts in a way. So
I agree
yeah.
with you there. I absolutely agree with you there. The lessons. I did a lot of hard styles before I came to the soft styles, and I noticed immediately all the fundamentals and foundations that exist inside qigong. Would if I would have had those back when I was doing aikido, it would have been great. I would have been unstoppable. So that's really awesome. You have a fascinating story. There is depth and details behind the veil that you have given us today that I would love to explore in a later segment at some point.
Definitely, I'd love to.
If you're
Love to
open
share
to
what I can.
it. Absolutely. So tell us about the webinar. Where can we see it? Where can our folks drop in?
Well, I'm still creating it, so it's not completely done. What I can do is I'm going to post the webinar on all my social media.
Okay.
And so you can go on my website, which is beginwithbreath.com. And so that's kind of like the hub where you can go. You can also go on to my YouTube page. And did you say you'll post some of that on the
I'll put all those
below?
links in the description.
Yes. But the best way to do it so you don't miss an announcement or when the webinar is going to be is to join my email newsletter list. And so basically that's just, I send out one newsletter a week. It's pretty brief, but what it does is it has the quote of the week. Sometimes it has a poem. It's something I do in my Tai Chi classes is at the end, I'll give a poem or a quote, and it's usually about mindfulness, awareness of some sort, and from all different traditions too. And but yeah, so if you join the email list, then you'll get announcements, which I said it's like once a week, and then maybe one more if there's an extra thing that I'm doing, like the webinar. So
Awesome.
And so that one is if you go to linktr.ee and then backslash begin with breath. And that is my list where you can join my email list or see any of my other programs for integrative physical therapy, um, private Tai Chi transformation program, or also my health transformation program, where we integrate kind of everything, a little bit of movement, exercise. Um, we integrate Tai Chi and also functional medicine, which is a holistic form of approaching the underlying source of disease, not actually the disease, but what are the imbalances in the whole body and all the systems that present as the disease. So we go through that as well in that program. So, but
That
yeah, I'd love to have more, love to have all my listeners here to check it out and connect.
absolutely. And you teach Fridays at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings
Yes.
Time.
Yeah,
And I
I
highly
do.
recommend
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I highly recommend Adam's class. I had the pleasure and the joy of flowing with Adam, and it was nearly transcended. There's very few times that I get to sort of just disappear into the flow, and the way that you manage classes and handle everything is fantastic. It was a lovely experience. So I'm jealous of anyone who gets you first.
Well, thank you so much.
You're more than welcome, sir. So, what's your last bit of wisdom for the Tai Chi Fit, Tai Chi, and greater world as we close out our segment here?
Well, kind of like what I said before, I mean, starting a daily practice, even if it's only 2 to 5 minutes, whether it's meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, I mean, you can actually mix them up, find out what's right for you and lead by example, you know. I think that's
Very
that's the best things I think we can do right now.
awesome. Thank you so much, Adam, for joining us here on the Chi today. I would love to have you back for a more in-depth interview.
Sure, I'd love to. Just let me know.
All right, will do, brother. Be good, stay safe, take care. Stay
You
away from
too.
that coronavirus out there.
You too. Thanks.
All right, brother. Good for you.
Okay.
And that again is Adam Potts, one of our premier. When I say premier instructors, I that is not hyperbole. He is fantastic. You could see the knowledge and the expertise that he brings to the table, and it sounds like his story is very similar to my own coming out of the military. So uh, that's one of the things that makes Tai Chi for veterans so incredibly important is the fact that this is not a modality. We're not experimenting here. This is something where you have lines and lines of veterans who have found Tai Chi and it has saved their lives. Period. It is because it's not just the practice. And what Adam really pointed out there is it's not just the practice, it's an entire lifestyle. But it's at first, it's just showing up to class. You just go to class and you do a thing. And then when you get done, well, then you go on and you do another thing. But I can tell you from my own personal journey that I started doing the Tai Chi, and as I got better at it, there were changes that I needed to make in other places in my life. I couldn't drink as much, couldn't eat as much, needed to lose some weight. I needed to get to the guff of what the internal parts of it were. Right. That's when I adopted meditation and a lot of other Taoist practices, and I do that only because that is the tradition by which Tai Chi came out of. And so, why reinvent the wheel when there's a perfectly fine cart waiting for you to just push it down the hill? Why do that, right? So when you're looking at things, and I really love that he touched on this. When you're looking at making big changes in your life, you have to remember you do it one day at a time, one item at a time. If you're writing a book, one of the reasons that people start to write a book and never do is because a book is hard to write. If you're trying to write a book, if you're trying to write a sentence or a paragraph, well, that's a whole different thing, and you just do that. I also like the fact that he said a 2 to 5 minute practice a day Because to be honest, that's all it really takes to get you on your path. 2 minutes a day. Whatever you have in store, whatever you're trying to get done in your day, just do 2 minutes. 2 minutes. In fact, and I'll give you a good example. From yesterday, I wanted to go bike riding, and I was running out of time. And I was like, well, I don't have an hour to bike ride. So there's no way I'm going to get my 10 miles, 10, 12 miles in, depending on how fast I'm going. And I was like, do I want to? But I only have 45 minutes, and I can't do the. But if I don't do it at all, then there's no bike ride. So I went for an 8-mile bike ride. Right, I did. I took a quarter of the whole thing off. I still would ride. I have no regrets, none. I felt good. I was, I came back and I got the same feeling, that weird shaky leg feeling that you get after you've ridden a bike for a while. And that was. But it was good to have that versus not doing it at all. If I hadn't done it at all, I'd been beating myself up today, like, dang it, why didn't I do that? And blah blah blah. And we don't want to put ourselves in that position, right? And that's when the mind takes over and it starts to beat you down. What you want to do is set goals for yourself that you absolutely cannot fail at. And as you strengthen, so if you say, I want to do 100 push-ups a day, you start with a push-up. And the next day you do 2 push-ups. And if 2 push-ups is too hard, you go the next day and do 2 push-ups until 2 push-ups becomes easy. Then you push it to 3, then 4, until, and if it takes you a year to go from no push-ups to 100 push-ups a day, that's okay. That is absolutely okay. That year is going to pass no matter what. It's a question of what you're going to do with it. There is always more time. There is always plenty of time, right? The universe has put you here for a certain amount of reasons, and you have a part to play. But in that play, you, in many ways, and I'll take all of the woo-woo out of it. In many ways, life is the universe trying to understand itself, right? Stars, as far as we know, can't reflect on the nature of the universe. As far as we know, we're the only entity that does that. Now, I look at my cat sometimes, and he's looking at me right now. He's mad because the screen's up and he can't jump on the back of my chair. I look at my cat sometimes and I wonder, what does he think about? Does he have these existential questions in his mind? Probably not, because he's got a tiny little kitty brain that I got off of Craigslist. Not the kitty brain. I got the cat off of Craigslist. But but you do. You can wonder about the nature of things, the way of things, the Tao of things. And that's so incredibly important. Just want to check in and make sure our next guest is all right and on their way. Either way, I'll take you out all the way to the end of the hour if we need to. So as you move around, and part of it is just to start to think. You have to start thinking about an idea and let it mull around in your head. When someone says, put it out in the universe, that's what they're talking about. You have to think that an idea is, in fact, a physical manifestation. You have an idea. Electrons fire off in your brain through synaptic pathways that are there. That is a real physical thing that happens. Real physical thing. So that is you literally putting something out into the universe. I hate to tell you, you're a part of the universe, right? The earth is floating around in it. So when you do that, when you have that idea and you think about it, every time you think about that idea, you're forging, you're strengthening those synaptic pathways that fired when you had that idea. That is you putting it out in the universe. Eventually, that idea becomes so intrinsic in who you are as a person that you got to try it. So you try it. And you try it. Maybe you fail and you walk away, but it's nagging at you. right there. And so you try it again, and you make it happen a second time, and a third time. If you're trying to quit something or you're trying to add something to your life, it works the same either way. When it comes to addictions, it works the same way either day. Now, mind you, one of the very important things that Adam said in the interview was that he struggled with addiction and had to replace it with something that was healthy. That is the reality of the scenario. And addiction fills a hole in your life. It fills a void, and nature abhors a vacuum. So when you try to quit smoking, drinking, whatever, eating, it's if you're not replacing it with something positive, if there's not an exchange of value, it's a zero sum game at that point, right? Now sometimes those can be when I quit smoking, I did so because a pack of cigarettes went up to like $9 a pack, and it just wasn't worth it anymore. And so I was kind of like, all right, well, economics is going to cause this one. And I think you can put a down payment on a house now for what a pack of cigarette costs. That was almost 10 years ago that I quit, and I found the value in the money that I would save. Now I actually did replace smoking with an unhealthy addiction, and that was drinking for a while, and that ended up on a whole other deal. But it was right around that time that I started out doing Tai Chi, right? I had started doing Tai Chi before I quit smoking, but that was sort of in the timeline. And what ended up happening was, as I got better at Tai Chi, I noticed that the drinking was keeping weight on me. And so I wasn't as light and I wasn't as nimble as I needed to be in order to perform Tai Chi the way I wanted to. So I had to cut back, which meant I ended up doing more Tai Chi. A lot of those late nights at the bars and hanging out and all that had to go away because a lot of your Tai Chi classes are happening nice and early in the morning. You got to get on out there while the sun's rising, and feed off that energy, soak that energy in of the world waking up. We are not nocturnal beings. We need the sun. You talk about vitamin D deficiencies. Again, this is not a matter of woo-woo. This is just science. This is just reality of what we need. So don't think of it in a woo-woo sensibility. Think of it as a matter of course, as a matter of fact. There's a big difference that, and that's why I absolutely want to have Adam back, because I think his insights very much match my own. It's one of the things about Tai Chi Fit that I really enjoy. David Dorian Ross has a degree of physiology, I do believe, and human motion. And his insights into the mechanics of the body, how the body moves, is partially what makes him so good at Tai Chi. The other is just hard work, really, really hard work. He says all the time, I'm not very good at Tai Chi. I just work harder than everybody else. And that I find to be inspiring, because I did have a natural predilection to Tai Chi because of my martial arts background. But for me to really get into it, to really get good at it, I had to practice more. I'm not a big fan of yoga, but I started using yoga poses because it helped me get more flexible at my Tai Chi. Not a big fan of working out, but I started because I needed to get stronger for Tai Chi. I was not a big fan of meditation, but I started because it made me better at Tai Chi. So when you can find that one thing, and for you, Tai Chi may be something that makes you better at the things that you want to do. You don't have to be a lunatic like myself and devote your life to Tai Chi. Tai Chi can be a thing that helps you become a better surgeon, a better writer, a better showman, a better cashier, a better politician. God, yes, a better politician. My God. If anybody needed Tai Chi in this world, it is our political sect of society. I'll just say that right now. Both sides don't care. Don't care. Don't care what side, what party. They both sides. They all need it because it's a mess out there. If you haven't watched what's going down. So it is. It's funny that I started the Cheecast with our my walk down memory lane because this has been another walk down memory lane. And it's very important to sort of see that life moves on. Life continues. What you have is the moment. And you don't have to live in the past. You shouldn't live in the past and you shouldn't worry about the future. The reason being, so what I was doing this morning was not so, and I was in the moment, I was in a way reliving my youth. But here's the thing about what happened. So I'm in the kitchen and I'm dancing and I'm grooving and I'm moving and doing a thing and I'm dancing like I'm in the club. Like I just got out of the shower. Cat's looking at me like I'm crazy. I mean, I'm dressed and all that kind of thing. But I'm dancing around like I'm in the club. I'm having fun. And you know what? I moved very well. And the reason for it is because of Tai Chi. It is because of the work that I've done, because of those little steps, those little movements going forward that have built up to this pretty big body of work. And that's something that you can do. Everything, one little bit, every day at a time, every day, little bit at a time, 2 minutes a day. And you'll get whatever your goals are, you'll achieve them. When I started meditating, I did it for about 2 minutes a day. And then I went to 3, and then 5, and then it was 10. And I remember getting to the 12-minute mark and feeling like I wasn't done, feeling like I still needed to be there. And that started to get longer and longer. And right now, this week, so normally I meditate for about a half hour a day. This week, I'm going for 60 minutes a day. The first time I tried 60 minutes, if you've seen this in the past, I freaked out. Freaked out. Day 2, I ended up having like a panic attack before I went in. But what I realized about the 60 minutes is devoting an hour of your life in a 24-hour day to yourself, to looking internally, to focusing on every little piece of your body as you notice it, to let your mind be clear and free of all of the clutter that is it's not empty. Your mind is never empty. There's too much going on up there for it to just be empty. But there does come a point every once in a while where, like Adam was saying, where you become euphoric, where you get that bibulous feeling of you're no longer in control, where your brain starts to do the thinking and you're just along for the ride. And it is in those moments that something amazing happens to the body. Now, if you're doing it for 2 minutes a day, it's not something you should expect. In 2 minutes a day, you should be so happy that you just took that breath, that you just stepped away from life, took a time out from all of the external, and just focused on you. Because that's not a selfish thing. What is 2 minutes of silence to yourself if it means you're able to do 2 more hours of good in the world? Putting gas in the tank of an ambulance is not selfish. That's really the way to think of it. If we're all sort of living I don't know. If we're all walking ambulances, think of it that way. If you don't put gas in the tank, you can't help anybody. You cannot be selfless without a little bit of selfishness. And it's not really selfishness. It's just taking care of yourself. It's really all it is. That's where Tai Chi, that's where all the practices come into play. That's why this program through Tai Chi Fit is so important. It's so important to our nation's veterans. It's so important to everybody. The veterans get the spotlight because vets at a very young age, generally speaking, like at my age, I would have been able, if I hadn't gotten hurt, if I would have stayed in the Army, I would have been eligible for retirement at this point, and I'm still pretty young. So I was super young when I walked in. I was super young when I went to war. And that defined what adulthood was for me. It's what defines adulthood for a lot of veterans. And so they deal with all these things in such a compacted and crushing way where every illusion that you've ever had kind of gets flipped on its head all in one shot, one short little period of time. And then you're left kind of picking up the pieces afterwards. Well, over the course of a lifetime, just about everybody goes through that. You just don't go through it through such a concentrated dose. And I only say that to most because there are some people out there that absolutely do, right? There are some people whose lives are by far worse than anything most of our vets go through. So with that in mind, but because vets are at least a population we can point a finger at, we can see the amount, the impact that Tai Chi, mindfulness, that meditation, that yoga, that all these things have. And what I can tell you flat out is that I have experienced it, I have seen, I have shared the benefits of Tai Chi with my fellow veterans, with my community, and with all of you. And that has been an amazing, amazing experience to see the growth, the strengthening, the camaraderie, all that comes out of that. And that's what we're creating in Tai Chi Fit. We're creating community. We are creating a lifestyle, a culture in which we're all taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. We're being the calm in the storm. That's really the key. So, as we close out our GCAT today, and I'll have to see where my second guest found himself. Of course, things happen live all the time. That's why I'm here to hold it down, to anchor it down, to do whatever it is I just did for 30 minutes. Talking about almost killing myself in the shower, dancing to some slow jams. Some club jams, not really slow jams. You don't dance to slow jams. Yeah. I guess club jams. I don't know. Children from the 90s, at me. Let me know what's going on. Help me with the nomenclature here. All right, so once we get these things edited and out and blah, 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 you'll have all the links in the description below to find Adam, to see his classes and all that. But put it out, go to Tai Chi with Veterans. Adam's classes are Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or Daylight Time right now. And his class is phenomenal. And when I tell you that I enjoyed just being in that spot with him, just flowing with him. And we were doing it same way that I'm doing with you now over Zoom. Oh, it was good. You should go. You should absolutely go because one of the things about it is it's nurtured from within with Adam, as it is with The vast majority of our instructors, it is nurtured from within. They're sharing not just because they are instructors, not because they are providers, but because they are beneficiaries. That's really what it comes down to. And that is something that if you like, you can learn. And if you'd really like, you can teach. That's really the key, right? So if you're interested in learning more about Tai Chi and the Tai Chi Fit family, by all means, head over to taichifit.net and check out all the programs that we have available to students who just want to learn Tai Chi and to folks who would like to start teaching. So if you have a background, or maybe you just have a kind heart and you want to do something for the veteran community and your community at large, we've got something for you, right? Maybe one day you're here with me on the ChiCast, and I can't wait to see you. So with that said, I'm going to close out for the day. I'm Marcus Julian Carbo. You can find me at Tai Chi with Marcus on Facebook, Tai Chi W Marcus on Twitter, Tai Chi with Marcus on Patreon, and then you can find me all over the place at taijifit.net, Tai Chi Fit International, and on the Instructors Closed Network. You guys know where to find me. We'll put all those links in the descriptions below. And listen, stay calm, stay alive, stay well. Yeah, stay alive, stay well. Stay alive comes from the military. It's stay alert, stay alive. Mix that. Stay well, stay home, be good to yourself, and take care. And I wish you health, happiness, and harmony. Till I see you again. Have a great day. I'll see you Thursday.